Hello and welcome to this new edition of EcoTV, your magazine tailored by BNP Paribas Economists. On the menu of this May edition, small shocks, big reaction of the markets. This is the topic developed by Chief Economist William de Vijlder. Next, we talk about the secular stagnation with Philippe, that's going to be the graphic of the month. And last, we go to India, 3 questions to Joanna Melka, to look at what the Prime Minister has done over the past year. Stay tuned. Small shocks, big reaction. Is it an issue? We are joined by Chief Economist William de Vijlder. Hello.
Hello.
William, we saw recently on the economic side some minor data statistics, but on the other side, a big volatility, a brutal reaction of the markets. What happened at the end of April?
Indeed, we saw a quite interesting experience. M3 data, German inflation. Normally, there are statistics which are not that important for markets. This time around, the reaction was pretty massive. It is explained by the fact that there was a positive surprise, meaning that the release of M3 money supply growth in Eurozone was higher than expected, and also the German inflation was higher than expected. Not massively, but at least above expectations. What happened is that bond yields moved up a lot. As a consequence, the euro strengthened quite significantly, and as a consequence, again, the stock market went down.
What explains, according to you, this brutal reaction of the markets?
Well, I think there are different factors at play. One is there was a surprise, and that's important. The inflation surprise, for instance, comes after a period where we have not seen any surprise at all. So that's the first element. The second element, which needs to be mentioned, is that there is a kind of an end-of-the-month phenomenon. It seems that the ECB had already completed its buying operations in the context of quantitative easing for the month, whilst at the same time there was a new auctions in a number of markets, so there was a kind of an imbalance between supply and demand. The third factor, in my view, is the most important one. That is that nerves of investors are stretched because they know that bond yields at present are at an abnormally low level and they cannot stay there. So what happens is that when there is some evidence, data releases, for instance, which goes into the direction of confirming that the yields are too low, the reaction can be very brutal, and that's exactly what we have seen. Last question, William. Do you think this high volatility could impact the real economy at the end of the day? That is indeed a concern that one has, is can there be a kind of a contagion effect on the real economy? A priori, I would say that the risk is very remote. Let's not forget that we are in a European recovery and that the data I was talking about are just a manifestation or a confirmation that indeed things are improving. This should provide confidence for households, for corporates to spend more, to invest more, etc. And you just have to accept that financial markets are a little bit more volatile. What could change the game, however, is that if there would be some major reaction on the equity market. However, it is important to keep in mind that we are still in a very favorable environment to underpin equity prices, the environment of very generous monetary policy, whilst at the same time an economic recovery boding well for the earnings outlook. And it also means that the risk of a significant correction in the equity market seems very low. Thank you very much, William de Vijlder. Next, for the chart of the month, we're joined by Philippe to talk about the secular stagnation. Stay tuned. For the graphic of the month, we talk about the secular stagnation with Philippe. Hello, Philippe. Why do we talk today about these secular stagnations that last for a long time?
Well, two things. First, the speed of a recovery following the Great Recession of 2008-2009 has been quite disappointing with respect to the past recoveries. And the second thing is that Mr. Larry Summers, a former Secretary of State in the US, made a speech at the IMF in 2013, developing a lot of ideas regarding secular stagnation, and that speech had a big success throughout the world.
Now, there are two conceptions to explain the secular stagnation. One is regarding the demand, and the other one regards the supply. What is your thought about the supply side?
I mean, the idea has been developed, among others, by Mr. Gordon, who is a professor at Northwestern in the US, and he puts a few things in light. First, potential growth could be adversely affected by aging of a population, the fact that the increase in participation rate of women has increased a lot. You cannot do it twice. And third, a slowdown in technical progress that result in a weaker productivity growth than before. I mean, the technical progress that happened in the 19th century and early 20th century, combustion engine, distribution of electricity, and so on and so forth, resulted in a big wave of productivity gains. You see a slowdown in the 80s, despite the fact that computers were spreading. After some time, the computers did increase the productivity gains, but for the last 10 years, let's say, it's faded down again.
But what about the internet revolution? We saw that late 90s and now again today with all the digital services that spread out.
That's where you have a debate, because some people, as Mr. Gordon that I quoted, think that this evolution has to do with the construction of consumer goods. That is, you substitute a tablet to a computer, you substitute a smartphone to a cell phone, etc., etc. And consequently, that has no impact on productivity gains. But there is a debate, because some people think that we are in a situation like the 80s. There are a lot of innovation, and in the coming decades, these things will materialize with higher productivity gains.
At the end of the day, what is the solution? What should we do?
I mean, the Western countries are confronted with aging and debt, which means we need growth. We need potential growth. Getting potential growth has two ways. First, you have to increase the labor force in a time of aging, meaning what does it mean? It means postponing a retirement age to begin with, or hours of work. And second, it means encouraging innovation, which could have an impact there.
Thank you very much, Philippe Darvisne. Next, we talk about India with Joanna Melka. We talk about India now. 3 questions to Joanna Melka. Hello.
Hello.
Joanna, a year ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi got the power. What is the economic situation now?
Macroeconomic imbalances have sharply reduced, even though structural weaknesses remain high. India benefits from a favorable environment thanks to the sharp decline in prices commodities and to strong confidence from foreign investors. Economic has rebounded and should grow by 7.4% in 2014, the same level as in China. Secondly, the fiscal consolidation has pursued. Thanks to the decline in oil prices, the government cuts fuel subsidies and therefore increase its margin of its fiscal room of maneuver to increase its capital expenditures. And finally, the external vulnerability has sharply reduced.
Second question, for the Indian government, one of the challenges is to pass more and more reforms. At what stage are we now?
In the last parliamentary session, the government succeeded to pass some important reforms. The first one is in the insurance sector and the second one is in the mining sector. So even though 2 major reforms have yet to be passed, this is a very positive point.
Last question, Joanna, regarding the growth. You're quite confident regarding the reforms also, but still there are risks for Indian economy.
Yes, investment recovery remains a major key for the success. So the problem is that even though the macroeconomic and financial environment has improved, the business environment has continued to deteriorate. Moreover, due to the weak financial situation for corporates, it would be difficult for investment to recover.
Thank you very much, Joanna Melka. See you next month for another edition of EcoTV.
BNP Paribas, la banque d'un monde qui change.